What is going on, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another episode of the Kingdom Says. I am your host, as always, Garrett Williams. Tonight, we are recapping the Chiefs 2025 draft class. Joining me, we've got Mr. Thomas Pike, Arrowhead Tom. How we doing tonight, Tom?
Oh, I am doing well. I've got thoughts. I'm ready to get this rocking and rolling. So, yeah.
Heck
Good. It was
yeah.
a good weekend. Christmas came and went, and it's not the only thing that came. So, I'm excited.
It's a crazy one. That's a crazy one. Also joining us, Mr. Randy Ellenberger. How we doing tonight, Randy?
I'm doing much better now. Excited. Hell of a draft class. I'm pumped for a lot of these dudes. Some of them, maybe I not want some of them, but there's still one I'm kind of still scratching my head on. I'm trying to wrap my head around. But hopefully our discussion and maybe some conversation with some of our followers and listeners can help bring me around to the light. So, but I'm excited to start talking about these dudes now that they are, once they sign contracts, officially part of Chiefs Kingdom. So.
Yeah, it was definitely a very good weekend, I'd say. Very eventful draft weekend, obviously, with some of the major storylines and whatnot being hosted in Green Bay. It seemed like Green Bay turned out pretty good for the draft in person, and definitely seems like a lot of Chiefs fans are pretty overall happy with how this draft class shaped out. So, we're going to get into it. We're going to dive into every pick that the Chiefs made in order and give our thoughts, opinions about it. We'll also probably dive into a couple of undrafted free agents, some notable ones at the end. But yeah, gentlemen, without any further ado, let's get to it. With the first pick in the first round, the Chiefs selected Mr. Josh Simmons, the tackle out of Ohio State. I know we reacted to this live as a the Chiefs traded back from 31 to 32, pick up an extra fifth rounder from the Eagles, and get Josh Simmons, who was obviously rumored to be a Chief basically throughout the entire draft process. It seemed like his name was pretty much connected to Kansas City, a really, really highly touted prospect by most O-line guys' opinions. He would probably have been the first tackle off the board if he would have stayed healthy his final year at Ohio State. He had a really bad patellar injury. We'll probably dive into how that all goes. The Chiefs end up getting him at the end of the first round at pick 32. Tom, initial impression, thought, and opinion on Mr. Josh Simmons.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking about this player for a while. I know Randy and I have both had that conversation leading up to the draft. We talked about even making a move up to get him, and then it felt like as we got a little bit closer to the draft, there was just kind of this more chatter about some things, and about him potentially falling and being there at 32 without the trade up. So, kudos to not just waiting that out, but also getting a pick and flipping with the Eagles. Like you said, if he had not been injured, there's a real conversation that we're having about Josh Simmons being the first tackle off the board this year, especially with some of the size issues that some of the other guys had. I do think Will Campbell is a really good offensive lineman, for the record, and if he pans out a tackle, I wouldn't be surprised. But Simmons fits the mold, but also he's such a good mover and just understands how to set blocks up, how to attack a lineman, how to work as a unit. Like you can tell that he really just has some natural traits there. And got experience on the left and the right side, and yeah, I mean I know, and I want to throw this out there because the other piece. Oh.
Thomas is frozen.
What happened to Tom? Tom just like.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
you.
He's
frozen.
All right, keep talking. I got a message that said my graphics card just crashed. So.
Your graphics card.
We want to
probably close Madden if you still have Madden open.
So we're gonna finagle this. You guys can hear me. Ooh, come
Yeah.
on, camera. Um, it's always something, man. But yeah, he'd be the top guy if it wasn't for the injury. Off the field stuff that people speculated or whatever. Nothing criminal that I've come across, and I've kind of whatever. Maybe there's this attitude of he's not not for everybody type of guy, or maybe some maturity things. But it's been very vague. Those types of things. Um, I do wonder if there's questions about maybe his strengths and some other things, especially coming back from injury. And also, I think a lot of teams that needed a tackle probably don't have the luxury of waiting, like the Chiefs. They don't have a Jalen Moore type on the team that can kind of fill in. So um, I think all that factors in here. So I loved the pick. It's a pick that I've wanted for a while and was super excited when it happened.
Yeah, Randy, your thoughts on Mr. Josh Simmons?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to kind of echo everything that Tom was just saying, like to get a dude like this where we got him, it doesn't happen. Like listen to you watching the draft here the last few years. We keep saying that the Eagles keep getting all these really great defensive players that just kind of fall in their lap. Well, it happened for us. Like getting Josh Simmons at 32 is like it really shouldn't have happened. It really shouldn't have. But I'm really happy it did because that made Christmas Day like even better. Like you got the top present on your Christmas list. And to think, we had these conversations leading up to the draft that if Simmons was really the guy that we wanted, we figured we were going to have to move up for him, and to actually be able to trade back one and pick up a pick from Philly, and when that happened, I was like, what in the hell is going on? Like, why
Yeah.
are we doing business with the devil? But as I read one rumor that they had one question and they asked the Philly GM if it was offense or defense. He said defense, so they let him sneak ahead. So, but yeah, having Josh Simmons on our roster right now is fantastic. Also, us having the luxury of having Jalen there to hold down the fort as of right now, if Josh isn't ready to go for training camp, it is even better. Like there is no pressure for him to start right now. That's going to give him full and ample time to really rehab and get that knee to where it needs to be. So there's no need to rush him in and see what happens and potentially hurt that knee again. Give the dude time, let him rehab. It really is kind of a perfect scenario for us. If he turns out to be who we all think and hope and pray he is, like we have finally solidified our left tackle problem that we seem to have just had for
a while. Yeah.
yeah. So super pumped for the pick. Yeah, I really don't think it really could have worked out any better for us to come away with the tackle and to get that tackle where we did. So
And Tom's camera's back. Oh, never mind. It's not.
Maybe no.
Still like frozen. Seems
We're
like.
working on it. If you're watching the video, no, we're going to troubleshoot it. We're going to keep rolling. You can hear me. My mother always said I had a voice for radio, or the face for radio.
Face for radio.
Yeah, you about to learn today. Yeah, this is definitely. I'm also really excited about this pickup. This is just the caliber of player that Josh Simmons is when he's healthy, which is obviously the big asterisk. When he's healthy, it's definitely a better left tackle prospect than we've seen in Kansas City in a very long time. Like even Eric Fisher wasn't quite up to what Josh Simmons was, and so just the likelihood of him being there still at the end of the first round was kind of crazy. But the medicals were a very real thing. He had a really serious patellar knee injury that it's tough for those big linemen sometimes to have to recover from knee injuries like that. So Chiefs taking a little bit of a gamble, but as we all know, the Chiefs medical staff is one of the best in the game, and that's a big thing, a part of the process that Brett Veach and his whole team would not have ever chosen him if Rick Burkholder and the Chiefs staff didn't completely check him out. And obviously they brought him in on a visit. They did multiple interviews and screenings and all that stuff to really dive into the medical and felt super confident by it. even Andy Reid even came out and said that he would probably be ready by training camp at the very earliest. So that's a very good sign considering it was 6 games into the season last year. So it's definitely still been a pretty recent time frame that he's coming back from. So like you guys both mentioned, the position that he's in where he can sit behind Jalen Moore, they don't necessarily need him right away. Definitely a luxury that the Chiefs had. That's probably a big reason why many other teams passed on him, because if you're taking a first-round tackle, you probably want that guy to be starting for you right away, if you can. And so the Chiefs are in a good position that they can, they don't have to. There's still a chance that he can get some reps later in the season if Jalen Moore doesn't pan out completely. Who knows? Even training camp, there might be a legitimate battle between the two, and we can kind of see if how the shape. Andy Reid was kind of interesting in his comments. It seems like they're very confident in Jalen Moore at left tackle. He could even play right tackle, and Josh Simmons even could play right tackle. It almost seems like there might be like a 3-way battle for left and right tackle between those two and Jawan Taylor. So we'll see. Training camp can always get crazy. They can always rotate guys in and out and just kind of test the waters on a few plays. So people always overreact and see 1 or 2 training camp plays of guy lined up somewhere and they're like, oh my gosh. They're going to experiment with everything. They're going to put the best 5 guys on the field. But long term, this, like I said, if he recovers from his injury well, which it seems like he's on track to be doing long term wise, this is your franchise tackle for the next 10 years at least. And it's such a higher caliber of player than the Chiefs have had probably in the whole Patrick Mahomes era as far as your left tackle. Like, this is definitely he's a dog. He's got really good feet, really good movement. You talked about the hand punching and just all that stuff. Like, he's definitely handled. Obviously, being out of Ohio State, you play premium teams and have really talented dudes go up against you. And he's definitely held his own. I think he had 1 sack given up his last 2 years of college or something like that. So it's pretty good. That's pretty good numbers, and definitely really excited to see him eventually be a starter for the Chiefs. So. It's just a really good pick that you cannot argue about. There's a couple other guys in the first round that we talked about I would have been intrigued by, but you can never pass up just getting your franchise left tackle at 32. So with that ended day 1 for the Chiefs. On to day 2, where the Chiefs had 3 selections, starting off with pick 63, their only second round pick, Omar Norman Lott, defensive tackle out of Tennessee. This is probably the most questionable one for all of us, and we'll kind of get into it. Omar Norman Lott, he was mocked to the Chiefs a lot throughout the process. I think the Chiefs brought him in on a top 30 visit, did a lot of work with him pre-draft, and it seemed like they were definitely interested. And it seems like a lot of people kind of connected the two teams for a while. He's a decent caliber of an athlete. He had it's interesting. Tennessee, how they ran their defensive line, they did what Kyle, our other co-host, would call hockey line, like substitution, stuff like that, where they're just constantly switching out defensive linemen. Even James Pierce, the Tennessee's first round pick, he really didn't get a whole lot of snaps, and he got more than Omar Norman Lott did. But that's kind of how Tennessee ran their defensive line, so you weren't getting a lot of snaps and a lot of reps for these guys. So definitely was kind of more of a projection based pick for the Chiefs. Obviously they wanted to add to their defensive tackle room. You want to add a nice young guy to pair with Chris Jones and kind of help learn and grow that position. It's a matter of how he can be productive, how his productivity can potentially grow and translate to the pros. There's really just not a lot of there's just not a lot to look at what he did in college. He had just a kind of an up and down college career, didn't have a whole lot of productivity, had some flashes, and so you're kind of betting on the flashes and the traits and the stuff like that. But this is the pick that, and I know Randy wasn't a fan of it. This is one that was definitely a head scratcher, and kind of one that, when I heard his name connected to the Chiefs early on, I was like, I'm good. I'm good. This seems like a project for someone else. But here he is, obviously Spags and mostly Joe Cullen. I think that was a big thing that we kind of learned when the Chiefs released the audio of them calling Omar Norman Lott. Joe Cullen got on the phone and said he was basically banging the table for him, and he was really excited to get him. So that that gives me some hope. But this is the most questionable pick for sure. Tom,
Oh, you.
you
Sorry.
there?
Can you hear me? I
Yeah,
am
you're
here.
laughing.
Yep.
So we'll talk about we talked pre-show a little bit about a couple guys, and I think it's interesting because I think I'm flip flopped on this pick compared to one of the other picks that we talked about. I like this pick more than I like the other pick. Norman Lott didn't have a like big share of snaps, right? But right by all accounts, like you said, that was not a talent issue. That was a coaching issue, right? Um, Obviously, there's concerns about his ability to stop the run and his fits in the run game. He's short. He's light for a defensive tackle. 6'1", 291. Okay. That said, his arm length is 33 and 3/4 inch, which is in the 70th percentile. His hand size, 10 and 3/4. Those are big hands. He had a 112-inch broad jump, was 85th percentile, 76th percentile vertical jump at 31.5 inches. The athletic profile is very promising, and I think if you look at him as a penetrating style, um, and that's what he did in college was generate pass rush, and then I think what you're doing is you're going, hey, we can put some weight on this kid. We can help him bulk up. We can get him a little bit stronger. Right now, he's got size, he's got length, he's got twitch, and he's going to be able to get some pressure inside next to Chris Jones, and he's also going to allow us to move Chris Jones around like we like to do. I think very similar to what Turk Wharton offered. I'm not sure. I need to pull up Wharton's measurements. Actually, he may not even have them here, but I think he is got a lot of upside for what he could be. And I understand again the piece of it that says like, hey, like, he didn't get that many snaps. He didn't do, he didn't have as much experience. He didn't start. That works both ways because that also means he doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on him, right? So I don't think in that instance it was a matter of he wasn't talented enough or he was stuck. Like, it was very much a coaching, kind of committee decision. I can see it a little bit there more. The fit is weird because I imagined them taking a more traditional kind of two gapping nose tackle sort of player, and even before Chris Jones and all that stuff like that was always Steve Spagnuolo's style. So it's very interesting because I think this is more of a Joe Cullen kind of pick. The other thing I'll say about Norman Lott with his arm length and his style of play, if you're like, I think you can line him up a little bit wider than a traditional. Like, you could move him out. You could probably even play him like you get in the 4-eye. You can get into, maybe even play some kind of base end kind of looks. Maybe not every down, but he's got the quickness and the twitch. Like, depending on how you're loaded up, I think you can move him around a little bit. And again, I think there's the athletic pieces that you look at. Yeah, we can work with that. So, I get the skepticism. I do. But I also can see it a little bit clearer with Norman Lott. Also, love his motor, love his energy. He's an energy giver on the field. He's just he's a spark plug. Like, when he did get to play, when he got in there, like, he was just making plays. And you look at some of the advanced metrics of the pass rush win percent, pressure rate, all that stuff. His name popped up near the top of all those lists, if not at the top. So limited.
He had the first. The highest pass rush win rate among defensive tackles last year with 18.9%. So, I mean,
it's good, but good numbers to have, but so yeah, I
Yeah.
I like it a lot. I like the pick. Maybe a little early for what I was anticipating, but wasn't too long ago there was conversation about him going in the first round. So
Yeah, there was a little bit of mocking with that, which would have been even crazier. Randy, I know you have a little bit of thoughts about Norman Lott.
Yeah, this, like, as I kind of alluded to in the intro, this is the pick that I'm still struggling with a little bit. I'm still trying to wrap my head around taking him where we took him. I think second round was, in my evaluation and me watching him and how I kind of look at defensive tackles, and especially the type of defensive tackle that I think we needed. Like, he didn't fit the bill for what I think we needed. I saw him more as a late third, like early fourth round pick. That's kind of where, if we would have drafted him there, I'd be like, okay, that's good value to me. This seemed like a reach. Like, someone in the room was just head over heels for this guy and had to talk everyone else into it. Coach banging the table for his guy. Like, was he the only one? Did he have to talk the rest of the staff and everybody else into it? Like, that's
Yeah,
what that's what it feels like to me, because we have Chris Jones, who's an absolute monster. We needed someone next to Chris Jones that's going to take up some space, eat up some double teams. That's going to allow Chris to roam free and get some one-on-one opportunities. Um, and with that being said, like, Lott is 6'1". He's sub 300 pounds. A double team gets set on him in the NFL. Like, he's I got a brand new pair of roller skates type thing, and like he's in the linebacker's lap. That's what I see happening. I think he's bad, and when I say bad, he's bad against the run, because more often than not, he's trying to win in a pass rush. I think his lane assignment, his gap assignment, his responsibilities are lapsed in his brain. Like, he takes himself out of position a lot. And that's the biggest problem I have with him is, yeah, I think he's a liability in the run game, period. Is he great in pass rush? Yeah, they used him in a rotational basis at Tennessee, like they do with their defensive linemen, and he played predominantly on later downs where his pass rush ability worked for him. Like, first and second down against the run, not a lot of tape. Not that I saw it. Maybe there is. There's a lot of people that have a whole lot more access to game film than I do, and I'll admit that that's fine, whatever. But that's the biggest problem I have is, like, I think he's an absolute liability in the run. Um, does he have to play right now? And granted, we still have Big Mike. We have a couple other dudes on the roster that can rotate in, and maybe that's what he is. Maybe he's just a rotational defensive tackle that comes in on pass rush. And that's where his skill set shines. Like, is he disruptive? Yeah. Can he push the pocket? Does he have some explosiveness? Does he have some strong hands and punch? Absolutely. I'm not going to knock that, because I can see that on tape and watching him play. It's just, there's just a whole lot of other things to his game that are severely lacking in what I consider to be crucial to be a quality defensive lineman. There's a whole lot of other defensive tackles that I liked in this class better than him.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
was Dane Bruler's defensive tackle 15 in Dane Bruler's ranking. So
Right.
he had about like a third, fourth round grade on him, which I think would have been more of a fair
Right.
spot to take him. I'm not completely out on the pick. It's just definitely a little bit questionable. You're definitely betting on more
And
tangibles that you didn't really see.
Yeah, and I'm not going to sit here. I'm not going to hate on the guy. He's
Yeah,
he's on my team now. I'm gonna root for him. I'm gonna pull for him. I'm just
yeah.
still sitting here trying to wrap my head around why we took him where we did. Like, what was the real thought process? Was it like an overall team, like everyone's in on him, or did a whole lot of people have to get talked into it by a coach pounding the table? So
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I will say, if there's one guy I have a lot of faith and trust in on figuring out and making a good defensive lineman out of, Joe Cohen is one of the best in the game. So,
yeah.
we'll monitor how he goes. It
I'm,
just
I'm,
seems
I'm
like
hoping and praying it works out. I hope
yeah,
everybody. I hope he turns into something awesome and makes me look stupid right now. I mean,
he
I
could.
I think
You
there's
know,
a
if I,
solid.
if I, if I get egg on my face for my take right now, that's cool. I'm a big man. I can take it. But Just prove me wrong. That's what I want. I want to see you show up on rundowns and stuff somebody, split a double team, and not end up in Nick Bolton's lap. That's what I want.
For those who are watching on YouTube, and if you're not subscribed and watching us on YouTube, you should be, because you just missed me having a very, just getting to watch me look away from the camera, turn, and look very concerned while my dog Scout chased after and ate a spider while Randy was talking. So this is your plug, a very large spider. So this is this is the plug to make sure you're following us on YouTube, because we love and the support from our podcast listeners, but you miss some of the behind the scenes stuff like this.
Yeah, I would have been sick if we got a live action camo Scout catching that. That would have been pretty sweet.
He came running over, like y'all didn't like. He came running across the room, and I thought like, oh god, is it a mouse or something?
Yeah,
and it was
a spider.
He just grabbed it.
Wow,
Scout is strong at the point of attack. Very, he's got good reflexes.
Good burst.
Vision is excellent. I think he's a pretty above average vision for a dog of his age. Really, high snap count. Very similar to Norman Lott. Very nimble.
Yeah.
I did. So going back to the draft, I comped Norman Lott to former Chicago Bear Tommy Harris, who, think about the old school Tampa 2 defenses, those under style tackles.
He is an under
tackle. I think Norman Lott, they'll want him to bulk up. I think that even just if he reaches his ceiling just as a rotational pass rusher, in that sense, and you play around that, I think you have a pretty safe, player in that sense. But I think that the upside there is pretty high too. If you can put some of that weight and strength on his frame, help him get better against the run. And I'll remind you, Derek Nottie was a very similar in size type of player. Was also sub 300.
I feel like Derek Nottie was a little bigger than that, was he not?
He was 299. I think he's 6 foot.
Oh wow.
Fourth round pick at Florida State University, 2000.
ESPN has him listed as 6'1", 317, but he's coming out. He was probably a little bit smaller. Yeah.
Go look at his combine numbers.
Yeah, and it's weird too. Like looking at the measurables, like I was looking for like the consensus, height weight on this guy. Like ESPN had him at like 6'3", 313, and I was like, okay, well maybe that's a little bit better. And then NFL's got him at 6'1", 290. I'm like, somebody else has got him.
Yeah, he came in at his pro day 6'1.5", 303. So right. I mean, I feel like he could put on a couple more pounds and probably be in that comparable thing to Derek Nottie. Yeah, I can definitely see that. Just TBD still.
I think he's way more athletic and explosive than Nottie could ever hope to be.
Yeah, so that's positive. Yeah,
but like I said, I'm not going to hate on the guy. He's a Chief, so I'm gonna
gotta give him time. Gotta give some time to.
This was just the one pick out of all of our picks that just left me scratching my head. I'm like,
yeah, I would agree.
But it had me scratching my head. But don't get me wrong, I'm with you in the sense that, like, I don't love the pick, but I mean, I get it. Actually, let me rephrase that. I don't entirely get it, but I can see what I think they're seeing with it, and I can talk myself into it.
You can talk myself.
I'm still working on that.
Until I see them get wiped away in the preseason and get completely smothered against the run, I'll hold out hope. I will hold out hope. Okay, moving on. A couple picks later, at the top of the third round, the Chiefs get another defensive lineman going with Ashton Gelati, defensive end out of Louisville. Notably, Randy chose him in mock draft warfare, which was one of 2 hits that we had out of mock draft warfare this year, which was very, very impressive. That's pretty exciting that we got 2 picks in part of one draft class. So, really, really interesting, really fun prospect. Just getting to dive in on some of his tape. He's got some juice. I'll tell you what, he's got some juice. I know Randy's a big fan of him. This is the pick that Tom says he's flip-flopped on us on, so we'll get his thoughts on it. But Gelati, he seems like he's going to be a really productive player. Really had a lot of good tape at Louisville, especially his final 2 seasons was really productive. Um, yeah, just a high motor. I mean, he's got good hands to him. He's got a lot of power to him. It seems even for being slightly undersized. I believe he's like 6'1", 260 or something like that. So a little bit undersized for what you might see a typical Spags defensive end, which was maybe just the one kind of question mark. It's like there's they pass on some guys like Landon Jackson that were more stereotypical that Spags size, but I tell you what, Gelati does not play like he's undersized. He definitely plays like he's up with the big boys, and really fun prospect. He's also mentioned after he was drafted that he is a mentee of George Karlaftis. So that's very interesting that the two have a connection already. And I tell you what, if you get him and George working together, I think good things are going to happen. Randy, I'm gonna get your thoughts on him on Gelati first.
Yeah, so this was I was pretty pumped when I got the mock draft warfare pick on this, and this is a guy that I kind of, I shouldn't say fell into late or like stumbled upon late, but it was a guy that we just kept looking at, and the more I watched, the more I dug into it. I was like, there's something about this kid that I really really like, and it doesn't really take long when you turn on some of the highlights and the tape of watching him. He is, like you mentioned the word juice, and like this guy is like a live wire all the time, and that's and if you've ever talked to me about defensive line play, my number one characteristic is motor. Like I will take a kid that gives nonstop balls to the wall effort every single play over a kid that may be bigger, faster, stronger, more athletic and talented, but doesn't play all the time. Okay, that was the Aiden Hutchinson year where the Georgia kid went before him.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever seen because Aiden Hutchinson is that guy. He
Yeah.
is the motor. You know what you're going to get from him every single play, and that's 100% balls to the wall. He's going to try to kick somebody's ass. The other kid, it may be more athletic, more talented, but he doesn't show up half the time. So, with that being said, like Gelati fits what I look for in a defensive lineman with that motor, that tenacity, that absolute dog in him. He's going to chase you down, and he doesn't care how long it takes. Like he will play through the whistle, and he's explosive and he's strong. The dude power cleans almost 400 pounds. Like he was a state runner up in high school in powerlifting. Like this kid is thick and he is strong and he's explosive and he's tenacious and he's everything that I love in a defensive lineman. Now, with that being said, the only knock that I have is that we took him and Landon Jackson was still on the board.
Yeah.
Everybody knows, me and Tom have been on the Landon Jackson train for a long, long time. And to see us take Gelati when Landon was still sitting there, that was the only head scratcher for me at that point. Um, a lot of people probably would have been more okay with this if it was the second, third round pick. If it was later in the round, like being up here at the beginning of the third round, a lot of people are like, it's a little early, but the more you read and hear about this pick is like there was a whole lot of other teams that were looking to jump up to try to grab this dude in this area. So they're definitely more plugged into to the hearsay and whatever every other team is thinking more than we are. But super pumped for this guy, and he's not going to be asked to come in and be the starting defensive end right now. Like we have a solid rotation of different skill sets to throw at tackles right now. We got Furious George on one side, and then we got a whole bunch of other dudes coming from the other side that can rotate, and they all offer a little bit something different. When it's Omenahu or FAU, and now Gelati, we still have Dana. Like,
Yep.
we have a solid run at defensive ends that we can just constantly throw fresh bodies at you, and when it comes third quarter and Gelati's still fresh and your tackle's tired, that's not going to be pretty for you at times. So, yeah, this one I was pumped for. Like I said, the only head scratcher there was one dude in particular who, I think we all loved a little bit more at that spot, but still incredibly happy. And the more you read in and more you dig into this kid, the more you're going to like him.
Yeah. I was actually really surprised Landon Jackson was even still on the board around that time. I wonder if that even maybe factors in a little bit where they're like, we were kind of planning on Jelani being available here, not Jackson. So we're just gonna
Right.
stick with who we were kind of. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Tom, what's your thoughts on Jelani?
So like this is where I'm conflicted because I actually really like Gelati as a player. I love watching him play, and I agree a lot with a lot of um, what Randy said. I think he's an energy giver. Dan Brugler described him as playing like a Tasmanian devil, and you see that like
is
immediately
very
jumps
nice
off, right?
comparison.
It's one of those things where when you're watching a team on defense and even before you know who's who or who's what number, like certain players just catch your eye, and he's that guy on that Louisville defense. Um, I so there's two pieces of this that kind of catch me off. So, and Randy and I will probably will have a civil disagreement on this one. Um, arm length, yeah, arm length, hand size matter in the trenches, especially arm length. Now, it is not a decisive factor on if you can play in the trenches. It just tilts the scales one way or another. Um, for example, Trent McDuffie, when he was coming out, shorter arms, shorter corner, that's why he fell. If there's any question about how good Trent McDuffie is, we know that's not an issue. And I acknowledge that sometimes teams get caught up in that, and maybe that's what I'm doing now. The concern there, though, when you have those outliers, is it's not again not a disqualifier, but it reduces your margin for error in a game where you're like, especially I think in the trenches, where that margin for error is already really small. Um, and it's not like he's going to get locked out every time or whatever. It's just there's going to be it's the arm length. You know, there may be times where that becomes a disadvantage. He has shown an ability to work through and compensate for that. So um, I'm not ruling him out. I'm not like writing him off. So that's where this is what leads me to my second point, and this is something I started to ponder and allude to a little bit before the draft, and now I'm going to just come out and say it, which is it may be time to put to bed some of the common narratives about what we expect Brett Veach to do in the draft. Trent McDuffie was an outlier. Did George Karlaftis make sense? Yes. Felix, kind of. Um, Mike Dana, no. Ashton Jalali, no. Omar Norman Lott, no. Especially on the defensive side of the ball, we're seeing more and more of these pattern breakers. And I understand, there are narratives about going back to, Steve Spagnuolo and what's like a Steve Spagnuolo type of player. You know what a Steve Spagnuolo defensive player looks like? Good football. Good football. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
And one of the things that makes this coaching staff really good is something we're seeing and I think in real time, which is they certainly have preferences, right? But they are not letting those preferences stop them from drafting good football players. And so when I put that in the context of Ashton Jalati, it's a surprise because he doesn't fit the typical mold. Yes, I was looking more at Landon Jackson. Yes, I'm worried about the arm length because, again, just even outside of what we expect, it's an outlier, right? A fifth percentile. But there have been guys who have done it, at that arm length. I compared him to Melvin Ingram, right? Very similar frames. And I think they have very similar kind of energy level, and they're going to hustle and they're going to, Gelati is a lot stronger than he looks, on paper, right? Like Randy talked about, 6'1", short armed up. This kid is a monster. So I think part of my struggle with it is it was such a outlier for it was such an unexpected piece of what, but like we came to expect that because we kind of created these narratives in the Chiefs circles
Yeah.
and we worked with them. And I'm just going to go back to the Chiefs are going to draft good football players. Period.
Yeah. Period. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's almost kind of expected at the same time because Tom mentioned, the mold is starting to been broken more and more, especially on these defensive players. And I remember us talking about it during the season how the Chiefs defense has started to evolve a little bit. Steve Spagnuolo obviously he made his bread and butter running the 4-3 defense back in the day in the Giants and whatever. And once he came to Kansas City and started implementing a similar thing. But I remember many conversations we had last season about this team, they're kind of running more 3-4 stuff. They're kind of doing more hybrid stuff. They're more different looks, different guys they're employing. And, obviously there's always still going to be a role in Spags' defense for a big, lengthy, big frame guy, similar to a George Karlaftis, and FAU's kind of similar in that build. But, they tried out Josh Uche last year. Obviously that didn't work. He didn't really do much against the run. Big thing about Gelati, he does hold up pretty well against the run. I mean, he's definitely because how heavy his hands are and how crazy his play strength is. Like he's definitely an asset in that department.
This is a kid who defeats kick out blocks and reach blocks for the edge on a regular basis. Like
yeah,
running traditional power, running a fullback edge, Lottie not a great idea for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's very interesting because we've talked about this a lot, where it's like the expectation, the Chiefs kind of tell you what they want before they do it. I mentioned that a lot when the Chiefs drafted Xavier Worthy. They tried out Kadarius Toney as that fast, explosive weapon type deal, and they, obviously they traded picks for Kadarius Toney, and Andy told you that he wanted this type of player in his offense. After they traded Tyreek, they wanted another player like that in their offense. And it's the same thing on defense. They tried telling you last year when they traded for Uche. It's like Stags kind of wants a smaller guy who's obviously you want to hold him up to the run as well, which was Uche's shortcoming. But this is kind of expected when you kind of look at it like that, where they're shifting to maybe doing some 3-4 looks and doing just different packages and stuff like that, where Gelati can play a 4-3 end and put his hand in the dirt, but also I think he's got a lot of stand-up linebacker in him as well that he can utilize him and like Leo Chenal, the kind of packages you can employ as far as smaller pass rush sets. It's very interesting. But Gelati, I think, he just kind of defies those molds, mostly just how he plays. I think it's a big factor in the fit, I think, for Stags.
I really want to see Gelati and Chenal line up side by side on like field goal block type stuff. Like,
oh yeah, that too.
There's a lot of beast mode in those two, and there's going to be a lot of explosive power between those two guys. And I think the combination can block a few more field goals for us, which would be pretty sweet.
Yeah, that would be good. I think Melvin Ingram is a very, very fair comp from Tom. He has like basically the exact same build as
Melvin Ingram on juice, all juiced up.
Yeah, well, hey, Melvin Ingram in his heyday at the Chargers, he was a dog. He definitely gave Alex Smith a run for his money multiple times. He was. So I'm pretty excited about the Gelati pick. It might be a tad early for what I think Randy in the mock draft warfare took him with the second, third round pick at 95. So maybe a tad early, but for a guy like if you're in love with a guy like this, you're gonna have to take some some flyers and take him a little bit higher, because otherwise you have a long ways to wait. And he's probably like Randy had mentioned, there's reports that there were multiple teams that were looking at Gelati in this kind of range, so he wouldn't have lasted much farther than where he was.
He was coming up.
Yeah. So that would be a very exciting pick to add to the D-line room. Going on next to the other third round pick, Noel Williams, cornerback out of California. A little bit of an unexpected one. I don't think we talked about Noel Williams very much on this podcast. He was kind of a guy I saw late in the process, getting some love like a day or two before the draft, with some guys really hyping up some of his film and whatnot. He led the FBS last year in interceptions with 7 of them. If you just turn on his tape, you can instantly tell that he is a ball hawk. Like he is definitely not afraid of going after the ball. He's got really good instincts, it seems like. Not the typical length for a Stags corner that we kind of Obviously, we just talked about how they don't really care about that anymore, it seems, but just a little bit more undersized. Not that there's a couple other guys on the board that might have been a little more fit there, but it's an interesting player. I don't mind the pick. He was Dane Brugler's cornerback 8 in the draft, so that's not bad value for getting him getting him at the end of the third round there. I don't mind it. I don't mind it. Cal is not south of Mason Dixon line, so Cal would be short circuiting right now that we just drafted someone like that. But Tom,
it's okay. California is the one exception.
California, you're right. That is that
Right.
we have discovered that is the one
Cali,
exception. If you are from or played in California, you're good. So, Tom, what are your thoughts on Noel Williams?
So yeah, I think he's a guy that a lot of fans kind of went, wait, what? And he's a name that, again, on the circuits or on the kind of the postseason process was heating up. I was partially surprised that he went as early as he did, but then when I looked at the way the board fell and some other things, and again, to continue we're breaking molds, and not just the south of the Mason-Dixie line mold. I'm talking a guy who can grow a lot as a tackler. That was a big reason why I was like, dude, this player's really fun to watch, and I really like him, but there's no way Steve Spagnuolo is going to let this guy who sometimes has, if it's not like a clean layup tackle, I'm not saying he makes business decisions, but you kind of go, did you make a business decision there? Or I kind of hope you did, because that was a bad effort if it wasn't.
He is also a corner, and that's just kind of what they do.
Yeah.
Marcus Peters, Marcus Peters, shout out.
Yeah, but so the ball hawking piece, he's coming in with a mentality that is different than I think from a lot of what we have in the room. Trent McDuffie is a dog, and he is, I think, one of the smartest, most nuanced players at the position. Noel Williams comes with a little bit different bark, and that he's going to treat every ball thrown his way as if it's his, and that is how he plays it. And yeah, there's a little bit of gambling, there's a little bit of risk to that. I comped him to Xavier Howard because he goes up and he gets the ball. He's got some good ball skills. I think he's got he can do a little bit of zone, a little bit of man. Just so obscenely competitive. The other guy that I was kind of flip-flopping on, and I went with Xavier because more so for the measurables, but reminded me a little bit of longtime Steve Spagnuolo corner Janoris Jenkins in terms of that, just going to get in your head, alpha dog, not going to let you have any rest, going to make you fight for every inch. And if that ball is in the air, you're going to have to fight me for it. The pick was confusing when it happened, but I also have warmed up. Probably the pick that I've warmed up to the most. I also wonder, and this is with that, some of that stuff. I think if for some reason you can't get some of the stuff done, maybe the corner piece doesn't work out, I could see you, letting him have some different roles as a deep safety, quarter safety. I think of what they did with, Kindle Fuller and that type of stuff, where you're kind of moving guys around. And I know, Steve Spagnuolo has talked before about kind of having different coverage pieces and then rush pieces, and he kind of almost sees it as almost a positionless kind of game back there. Yeah. And I think with Noel Williams' skill set and competitive demeanor, if you put him in a position where he's just reacting and playing the ball in the air, that's where he's at his best. And so there's things you got to work out, tackling, strength. He can get a little grabby for sure, but that is on brand. But I think the upside there is pretty substantial. So I'm pretty jazzed about it, especially because this team really did not have many interceptions last year, and that was a piece that sometimes you that's a big deal for your team dynamic. and getting that getting those turnovers. Turnovers win games, and Nolan Williams brings that.
Yeah, I agree. Randy, what are your thoughts on Noel?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is admittedly, this was a guy that I didn't have a ton of knowledge on throughout most of the draft process. He did start to sneak up boards and get a little bit more traction and stuff towards the end. But yeah, when the pick came in, I was like, huh, all right. Like it made sense, but it was also just still like a little bit of surprise. Partly because I wasn't as familiar with him as I was with some guys that I figured would go in this range. Um, but what I did know about this guy is like what Tom alluded to. Like he is a ball hawk. Like this kid has some serious ability to make plays on the football. 7 interceptions last year. I think he had 14. I think he had 7 the year before, so he had 14 in the last 2 years. So he's got a
14
knack
total.
for it, and that's one thing that our secondary really lacks. Like Tom mentioned it too. Like we don't pick off a lot of balls. We bat a lot of balls. We force a lot of incompletions. Our guys are great in coverage. They don't give up a ton of huge plays, but we don't come away with the football very often. And I think that's something that we really, really need to do a better job of. And this kid is really, I think, really going to help with that. And again, he's in a position right now where he doesn't have to come in and be the dude either. Like he's going to come in and be probably fourth on the depth chart. Um, he's going to be great in situational pass game where he's going to be able to really use his eyes and abilities to cause some problems. So I think he's a much better zone defender than he is a man, just with his eyes and his ability to um, play that robber type position too. Like he can really come out of nowhere and come away with the football. So um, I think this kid is really really fun. Late third round, not a ton of expectations for him to come in and play a ton to begin with, but sprinkle him in there. He can be a key contributor on special teams. He can come in those sub packages, nickel, dime, quarter. Like Tom said too, play him at free safety and center field on those on long third and long plays. Let him have some free reign and have somebody make a bad decision and he's going to come away with the football and take it back to the house. Like one of the first highlights I saw of him was picking off Cam Ward for a pick six, early in the season. So um, he's a good player. I mean, he's 6 foot. He's right around that 200-pound range, which is kind of like the size for corners these days. Um, he's got speed. He's got ability. But I think for a mid-round dude, there's a lot to be excited about this kid.
Yeah, definitely. He has the athleticism that you can really make him into a chess piece on the defense, and he has a lot of outside corner experience too. So I mean, if you want to have an outside corner with a guy who you can rely upon, the biggest thing that you kind of think about when you draft a corner here, obviously third round, is Chiefs are going to have a lot of corner vacancies next year. There are four guys who are all up. Well, not four guys anymore because the Chiefs picked up the fifth-year option on Trent McDuffie, but Jalen Watson, Josh Williams, Najee Johnson, they'll all three corners that were selected in 2022. They'll all be, their contracts are going to be up after this year. So this is a big move towards the future. Obviously, you have Christian Fulton that you signed to be probably one of your outside corners, and so it kind of allows there to be a little bit of competition. Jalen Watson working his way back, he can be your other outside corner, and then allow Trent McDuffie to do whatever you want Trent McDuffie to do more slot stuff and whatever. But Noah Williams has a lot of experience on the outside, so if that's his path one day after Jalen Watson potentially, or like you said, he can kind of follow more of a Jamari Connor or Najee Johnson type role where he just kind of moves around wherever. I do think, the ball skills are incredible. Has a little bit of like Tyrann Mathieu in him in that sense where he has a knack for the ball. Good players like that who get a lot of interceptions. They're always around the ball. They're always reading the quarterback. It seems like they kind of always know what's going on around them, which is a big positive, even if all the physical tangibles don't necessarily. I mean, he's still a really good athlete. Don't get me wrong. It's just, as far as pure corner, like press and that stuff, he probably has a little bit of stuff to work on in that regard. But for a third round pick, obviously the Chiefs have had pretty good luck developing, mid third or fourth round picks and stuff like that at corner position. So, Yeah, I think he'll be a pretty solid addition.
Yeah,
I know
pretty.
we're almost on the hour mark, and we've been chatting for a minute. I want to read this because I was looking for a different story, but one of the things about Noel that turned people on to him during the process was his attitude. He had, specifically at the East West Shrine game. I just want to read this quick section from a recap of that from a couple months ago. It was a Dallas Cowboys website. Kyle Humans wrote it. So it says the first one-on-one session in Denton, Noel Williams broke up a pass against UNLV wide receiver Ricky White, but struggled to keep his feet on him with him on the later reps between the two. Instead of sulking in his early struggles, he showed up to Sunday. He showed up early to Sunday practice and never looked back. One of the things that I've kind of was heard, that was talked about with him was he really impressed teams with his competitive nature and with his personality. He was one of the guys at the East West game, kind of showed up and was very much an energy giver to his teammates. Helping people get lined up, talking on the field. So, really excited for the person that you're getting with Noel Williams as well.
Yeah, should be fun. Should be fun. So, moving on to day 3, and like Tom mentioned, we're almost at the hour marks. We'll try to move through these day 3 guys a little bit quicker.
And we're most excited about this next one. So that's the
this
hardest
is going to be this is still going to be a long one. Jalen Royals in the 4th round, wide receiver out of Utah State. This would be second mock draft warfare pick, courtesy of our guy Kyle, who could not be here tonight. But Kyle successfully chooses Jalen Royals. So another mock draft warfare, which is a hit. This is a guy that I became pretty big fan on fairly early in the process. Once I started diving into wide receivers, this is a guy, he just had a lot of juice to him. He's a really clean route runner. Definitely, as the draft has continued or concluded, there's been a lot of Rashee Rice comps to him. I know the Chiefs scouting director Ryan Nutt, or whatever his name was, he comped him to Rashee Rice as kind of that similar build and type of player. Really talented guy. I really liked him a lot when I was watching him as a day 2, day 3, early day 3 guy that would be around. I honestly thought he would be gone by the end of the 3rd round, so I was really excited to see him still on the board at 133. Probably maybe because it's a little bit smaller school, Utah State, but he's got really incredible athleticism to him. He's got really good hands. He's a fun receiver. I mean, he's still got some growing to do in some categories, but I think he's going to be a really solid option. And once again, the expectation isn't huge for him because you still have Rasheed, Xavier, and Hollywood Brown, so you can kind of slot him in as your wide receiver 4, have him learn behind those guys, get some early reps on him. But I think he's a guy who can create separation on his own, which is super big, and just overall, I was really excited about this pick, for especially also hitting another mock draft warfare. So, Randy, what are your thoughts on Jalen Royals?
Yeah, when this one came across the board, like I was pumped. Like I didn't even actually realize that he was still available because,
Yeah,
like you mentioned, like I expected him to be gone. Um, in that 3rd round range is kind of where I figured he was going to go. So for him to be there for us at this point and to come away with just a player who really fits everything I think Andy Reid wants in a young wide receiver. He's that sub 6'2" range. He's 6'2", 205. That seems to be kind of that sweet spot that Andy seems to like with his wide receivers to be. But when I first started watching Jalen Royals, like I had flashbacks and just relapses of Puka Nacua last year or during the draft process with him. He does a lot of the same type of things. Like he's explosive. He runs great routes. He does all the little things that you want. He goes across the middle. He's great after the catch. He is a solidly built, like strong, stocky wide receiver that can run. He's got great hands. He's got great run after the catch. I mean, he's just a lot of fun to watch. Like it doesn't take long watching highlights of this kid for you to really be like, I'm a fan. Like this is, I could cheer for this guy for a long time, and I think he's going to do a lot of really good things for us. And again, he's going to come in and be wide receiver 4 or 5. coming in certain situations to where, he's not a ton is expected, but I think everything we get from him is all going to be it's going to be a plus every single time. I think this guy will finally push one of my, burrs in my saddle off of our roster finally. And so we can bid adieu to Sky Moore, hopefully, because I think Jalen Royals is going to be everything and more for what they hoped Sky could have been. Super pumped for this one, and Kyle getting in for the mock draft warfare. We got 2 picks, which is pretty sweet. I don't think we really could have asked for a whole lot more or a better scenario or a better pick out of that 4th round for a wide receiver getting a kid of this caliber.
Yeah, it's incredible, Tom. It's incredible. He was still in that striking distance. He was Dane Brugler's wide receiver 7. Like, come on.
Yeah.
We got him in the 4th round.
I listen to a lot of NFL draft coverage, like, people who aren't fans of the Chiefs, like, and it was one of those, are you kidding me? How did we let them get this guy moment?
Yeah.
I read a lot of that.
Yeah, Steve Smith Sr. had a really good video breaking down James Palmer on Jalen Royals. He was really complimentary as well. I'll tell you what, Steve Smith likes to pick a lot. Yeah.
Now I want to temper some expectations here and say, Royals fell for a reason. NFL teams are bad at drafting, but so a couple of things to consider. First of all, do yourself a favor. Turn on his game against Boise State. I think it's on YouTube. If you just type in Jalen Royals versus Boise State. If you want to know what the best of Jalen Royals looks like, he was on fire that game. From like the opening whistle. He was the focal point in Utah State's offense. When you're watching him on tape, like there's a narrative about him, like, he ran the 4.4 at the combine, and people go, yeah, but he's not that fast on tape. And it might have been the Steve Smith video. Somebody pointed out, he had to slow down in an offense because his quarterback did not have an NFL arm. And so he was just, and if you watch him, he has to make some pretty tough adjustments for some of these throws. He's coming back, he's making one-handers, like he had to play with some pace. When he got the ball in his hand, you saw the speed, you saw the toughness, you saw the competition. Again, but even before the draft, Matt Harmon, who does the reception perception profiles, talked about Jalen Royals, compared him to Rashee Rice. They're identical measurables. Royals weighs 1 pound more than Rice. Otherwise, they're like pretty much clones. And he talked about even the usage. So Jalen Royals and Rashee Rice both were like 83% of the time, or some high percentage of the time were lined up on the left side of the field. The Utah State ran a lot of screens, curls, slants. So a lot of quick game with Jalen because, again, not a lot of talent on that team. And their strategy was get Jalen the ball because he's good at this football thing.
Yeah.
So,
there's
a strong argument to make that he has some of his best football ahead of him. I think I want to keep us relatively so hard to be like realistic because it's so exciting. But absolutely great value there. I was like, there's got to be something. There's got to be a reason why he's falling, and I haven't figured that one out. Other than teams thought he played slower than what he ran, and I would agree with that to an extent. But when you get the ball in his hands and he was able to like turn it loose, he's got that 4.4 speed. Like that's a real thing. So I'm pretty jazzed about it. Learning the pacing and some of the nuance and route running is going to be a next step for him. But they kind of already have the blueprint in that with what they did with Rashee Rice. And so I think he's a great addition and is going to be another one of those weapons who I think is going to feast underneath when you've got Hollywood and Xavier outside, and again you can mix and match your receiver looks with him here. So super excited about that pick, especially for a 4th rounder.
I mean, you look at he had a little bit of a slower start to last season. His two worst games of the year were probably against the 2 toughest teams on their schedule with USC and Utah. But after that, here's his stat line. Here's his stat line after those 2 games: 10 catches for 112 and a touchdown, 9 catches for 211 and 2 touchdowns versus Boise, 10 for 155 and a touchdown, and 11 for 188 and a touchdown. So he caught fire after those first 3 games and was literally unstoppable.
And I watched the USC game, and I watched the Utah game, especially the Utah game, because Utah plays a very physical brand of football.
Right.
And like he was up for the task. There was, I don't know if the rest of his team showed up that day, but he was there and he made as many plays as he was given an opportunity to.
Right. Yeah.
And we mentioned his catch and everything. His drop percentage is really low. Sure-handed. He does sometimes, get a little excited, start running before he catches it. And those have been like the couple of drops he's had. But those just, I think, again, what that offense was asking of him, I think he could really thrive as a rookie in that complementary role that he'll be in.
Yeah, really fun prospect. Plus, he has a little bit of special teams availability to him. He handled kick return duties his final year at Utah State, so he has that versatility to him as well. Yeah, I think really solid choice. So moving on day 3, we've got the 5th round pick, Jeffrey Bassa, linebacker out of Oregon. This was the other head scratcher. Not really as much of a head scratcher for me. I just didn't know him just because I don't know if I looked at like more than 2 linebackers in this class because I really didn't view it as a big priority for the Chiefs. Although looking at him and looking at the prospect and what type of player Bassa is, I can obviously see the fit. He's kind of more of a coverage linebacker, kind of a similar Drew Tranquil type style of a player. Obviously, you have Drew Tranquil only on one more year of your deal here, so you're kind of planning for the future, upgrading the floor of your linebacker room. He's got a lot of special teams. He can immediately contribute to special teams and all that stuff. Definitely a really good athlete who was pretty productive at Oregon. Not mad about it. Not mad about it. The 5th round is the extra pick that we got from trading back with the Eagles. I know the Chiefs did a couple other trades throughout the day 2 and day 3. I believe they moved up for
Yeah,
I believe they moved up for Jalen Royals. If I'm not mistaken, they moved up like 10 or so picks, and then during the 7th round they made some trades. Yeah, they're pretty active on day 3. But Jeffrey Bassa, like I said, don't really know a ton about him. I still haven't delved into a lot of his tape, but just by the athletic profile and what he kind of the prospect of him, I'm not too mad about it, Randy.
Yeah, I mean he's a fun player. And in that 5th round, these are the type of guys that you really want to take a swing at, like a linebacker who was a former safety.
Yeah.
He's got great speed. He put on some weight to play linebacker. He was a little light in the shorts that first year they moved him. Second year he came back about 10 or 15 pounds heavier, and you could really, really tell. But his ball skills, his ability to chase and tackle, his ability to cover is really, really intriguing. So a 5th round guy with his athletic profile, ability, background as a safety, he literally is. He's a lot like Drew Tranquil, but he's bigger, faster, stronger, and younger. So played for that Oregon defense, who was pretty solid last year.
Pretty good.
I think this is really, really, really good value, especially for a position like you said that like a lot of us didn't really put a ton of stock into this year. I figured we were probably going to load up on some camp bodies and stuff with UDFAs when it came to linebackers and maybe 7th roundish type stuff. But to get a kid like this in the 5th with his traits and his ability to sit and learn behind Drew and Nick, and to hopefully get some of that beast, death row mentality from Chenal to rub off on him. I think he could turn into something, and right now he literally is like prototypical like special teams linebacker. Like he is going to be a kickoff menace.
Yeah.
He's developmental guy, 5th round. That's what they all are. You're not going to get a whole lot of starters at this point, but there's some ability there, and it could be fun to watch him play.
Yeah, definitely. Dane Brugler's linebacker 4, Tom, which is pretty good. I mean, Dane Brugler had a 2nd, 3rd round grade on him, so
yeah, he had some more. He had some fans out there, and I think still in that kind of transition of adding to his frame and getting stronger and learning to kind of play through the garbage up front. But very instinctive as a tackler. Very, you can see the spatial awareness. You can see, kind of a natural, um, you know, he sees it, he hits it. It's not. He flows very well, and I think he's definitely going to excel on special teams. But he's probably a year, maybe a year and a half out from getting probably shaping up his body a little bit more to be defined for his role in the NFL. But I think that there's you could make an argument that he's going to see starting snaps one day, and he's in a good spot because again, Drew Tranquil, Nick Bolton at least mentally knows as much as about the game as you're going to get, and then Leo. Really, what we need to have him do is we just need to, put him in Leo Chenal's backpack and just tell him, hey, whatever Leo eats, you eat. That's we're going to put some weight on you. When he wakes up in the morning, he has a bowl of rusty nails. You're going to eat that too, like that.
Mhm.
Sorry, that's just your diet now, Jeff. Like that's just how it is. So
it's definitely a good spot for him to you can get him in there as your linebacker 4 or 5 behind. You probably maybe keep Cochran too, Jack Cochran this year just in case. But special teams he'll immediately contribute, and then long term he definitely has a role as that will linebacker, that coverage guy that you can rotate it on some packages. And who knows? Yeah, if he gets bigger, he could be a solid number 2 linebacker for you behind with Nick Bolton for a while. So not a bad pick, especially in the 5th round, getting a consensus like top 150 guy. It's pretty good. So, and then last but not least, in the 7th round, the Chiefs go with Brashard Smith, running back out of SMU. This is honestly one of the more exciting picks for me. I'm a really big fan of this pick. The Chiefs traded up their last 2 sevenths just to trade up with the Patriots to get this guy at the top of the 7th round. Really good athlete. Really good athlete. He was a wide receiver, converted to a running back. He was at Miami for like 4 years, played wide receiver and a little bit of running back. Super athletic profile. He's a really fun player to watch. If he's put on some of his tape, he's a burner. He's got really good speed to him. Obviously has a little bit more of an undersized guy, but I'm excited for this as a prospect, especially getting him in the 7th round. It's a really good value for him. Tom, what do you think about Brashard Smith?
Yeah, this is a loaded running back class, and I think the Chiefs had a strategy. As much as I wanted them to take Caleb Johnson early, I think they recognize that they've got some guys in that room. They've got a functional running game, and they could just wait. And if you told me Brashard Smith went in the 4th round, and the 5th round, and the 6th round, it wouldn't have surprised me because he's talented. It's just a loaded class, and he got pushed down the board, and so I think they waited and they waited. He's still growing as a runner, and like you mentioned, Garrett, converted wide receiver, went to SMU, became a focal point of that offense as the running back.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's got some really impressive receiving skills, because of his history. But I was really impressed with I was surprised with how smooth he looked and how comfortable he looked running some of the inside zone concepts and even some of the short yardage stuff. I think, you want to kind of put him in a certain box of okay, he's going to be your 3rd down, just kind of pass catcher kind of back. Before we get to that place, he's got to work on his pass blocking, and not just his he's a smaller guy, but he doesn't always step up to the task. It's not something. He's still a little bit of a wide receiver in that sense. Doesn't really like to block. Again, just I'd have him sit down, and he wore number 1 at SMU. I would just make him sit and watch a former number 1 in Kansas City, which is Jet McKinnon, and go, look, this is the attitude you got to come with every time. I want to see you breaking hips and and cracking helmets. And I don't care if you're 7 inches shorter and 100 pounds lighter than the defensive end. You get in there.
Yeah.
So there's definitely room to grow, but I think he offers a lot of juice, a lot of speed, reception ability. I think we'll see some manufactured touches. He'll have to fight for his spot on the roster. Running back as a position is a tough one, being a 7th round pick. You got to come in and you got to earn it. because there's UDFA's, there's camp invites that are going to come in there and push you for it. So he's going to have to earn it, but he has plenty of upside to do that, and plenty of athleticism to really carve out a role. So great value for where he was at, and like I said, I was impressed with him more in some of the short yardage and some of the other like kind of inside tough running situations than I thought I would be. So I was excited to see that.
Yeah, very, very interesting, especially Randy. It's interesting. He transitioned from wide receiver, goes to SMU. His college coach, Rhett Lashley, says, hey, come to SMU and you can be our version of Isaiah Pacheco. That's literally the person he quoted as a comp for what Rashard Smith could be. Very, very familiar, obviously, very familiar, Randy, with what we see.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he is an exciting player to watch. And then, as most Chief fans watching, going through the draft this year, and the fourth round rolls by and the fifth round rolls by, and we're all in our heads saying, "Hey, we still need a running back. We still need a running back." We're seeing all these guys that are still sitting there, and they keep going by and they keep going by. And now some of us are starting, some people are starting to get pretty cranky out there in the Twitterverse about throwing it as like, we need a running back. We don't have anybody in there, and I was like, this running back class was so deep, and we talked about this multiple times throughout the year that there's a lot of dudes in this running back class. It is just a loaded class, and like Tom said too, if he was drafted in the fourth round, the fifth round, I really wouldn't have been surprised. But for us to package our seventh rounders, move up and make sure that we got a guy who really could add something different than any other running back we have on our roster was a fantastic move. I don't know if I've been as excited for a seventh round pick of ours than this guy. I don't think I've ever been more excited for a seventh rounder in forever. I don't know. He brings a lot of juice. He brings a lot of excitement. The Jet McKinnon kind of comp is really, I mean, that's what we're looking for. But Tom mentioned too, like he really did surprise me on some of his ability and patience and running back nuances to that position that he's still fairly new to. But when you have an athlete like that, you find a way to get him the football, and then good things happen. So yeah, he comes in with that low 4.4 speed. Great hands out of the backfield. He brings a lot of juice in the return game as well. So I think Nico's going to have some competition when it comes to kick and punt return type stuff. Yeah. I really think punt return is a fantastic position with his wide receiver ability to catch the ball cleanly and get going. And then his physicality as a running back to make those plays in traffic in the punt return game. So I think that's going to be his niche early. Could he surprise us and get a lot more snaps throughout the course of the year? Absolutely. But, for a seventh rounder, I couldn't be more excited. He's going to be fun to watch. I'm excited for that kid.
Hold on, Randy. Are you saying that some people on Twitter were upset that the Chiefs did not draft a particular running back, maybe one out of Iowa? Somebody may have had a few moments in the group chat of mourning and despair when
we changed our group chat name to Caleb Johnson over anything else.
Yeah, no matter what. Yeah.
Caleb Johnson was the one, and then I think we changed it to life is despair, there is no hope. Once he was drafted.
Yeah.
What happens in the draft day group chat gets aired out for views.
Times can get a little dark on draft day, but while you watch your favorite prospects go by, then you land a guy like Rashard Smith and everything.
That's that happens to all of us. Like we spend so much time watching these guys and diving into the film and going over their bios and looking at all their numbers from the combine and their film from whatever Shrine Bowl or East West game, and we really start to put in some time, and you kind of you get your draft crushes, and you're like, this is a dude that I want. Like, we need to get this guy. And when there's opportunities to come around and we have a pick and they're still sitting there and we pass on him, and say we draft a guy in the same position, a la Gelati over Landon Jackson, you sit there, scratch your head. You're like, freaking what? Like, what are we doing? Like, Veach, come on. that my guy's still sitting there. Well, my guy doesn't mean shit. It's got to be Veach's guy.
Yeah.
So we can have all the opinions that we want.
He's the one with the Super Bowl ring.
It's Monday morning quarterback for all of us when it comes to, our expertise. But these dudes make a heck of a whole lot more money than we do doing what they're doing, and I'm just going to have to go on faith that they're smarter than I am and they're better at that job than I would be. But it happens. We all have our draft crushes. It sucks when they don't get picked, and you got to scratch your head and you piss and moan a little bit. But then you watch the film on the guy they drafted, and you're like, all right, I see it. I kind of like that guy too. So
Yeah. All right. Well, with that wraps up the Chiefs 2025 draft class. We went a little long, so we'll probably save undrafted free agents and any other talk for future episodes. Obviously, we have a lot more stuff coming up for the Chiefs. We have rookie minicamp and all that coming up soon, OTAs, all that good stuff. Some of that stuff's already going on with old Camp Mahomes down in Texas. So we'll definitely touch more on that as we get more in depth with these rookies and whatnot. Just one quick piece of news. Obviously, I mentioned it a little bit, but the Chiefs picked up the 5th-year option on Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis. So that's a big notable piece of news. Only a couple days after the draft, they announced that. It seems like they'll probably end up getting some deals done with them. Trey Smith first, and then I would guess McDuffie and Karlaftis in that order.
yeah,
I would lock them all up. I'd say lock them all up.
All you Furious George haters out there that don't think you play, give me a break, man. Like that.
Yeah. That's a pretty wild one.
If you think Furious George is not playing well, or he's not, playing up to his first-round draft status or whatever, like you're watching the wrong film, or you don't know what you're talking
about. Go watch the
Texans
divisional game again and tell me that he's not living up to first-round hype. 3 sacks in that game. He's only gotten better too. That's the thing about George. He has only improved. Like he might have been not like the
single year he's
like he wasn't the most like eye-catching prospect when we drafted him, which I think is why a lot of people were a little bullish on him, but he has been nothing but improvement. He's been just a motor, like everything about him. Working with Tom
those things I talked about that I look for in a defensive end. That Furious George is all about that business. So
yeah, exactly. So definitely lock him up.
All the crap you want, he's going to put you in your place.
Yeah, definitely. We endorse Furious George to be locked up for a long time, as well as Trent McDuffie and as well as Trey Smith. All those guys, I think you build your team around those guys.
Paid and locked in for a while.
All right. Well, that about does it. We appreciate everyone rocking with us. Let us know what your favorite draft picks were from this year's class, who you're most excited to see. And obviously, there's going to be a lot of fun things coming up for us here at the podcast. We got a lot more content coming as we kind of navigate the little bit down year after the draft. We'll do more draft prospect talk and whatnot, but mostly it's we were looking ahead towards the season, looking at the 90-man roster, training camp, a couple months away now. So a lot of fun times coming up in Chiefs Kingdom. We appreciate you all for rocking with us. Be sure to check us out at Kingdom Says Pod, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Check us out over on YouTube, where we'll hopefully put we'll get some short form content getting up there pretty soon with some of these draftees and some other things. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Find us on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever else you get your podcasts at. And we will see you guys sometime soon. We'll definitely be back soon. Definitely a little bit busy time of year, conflicting schedules and whatnot. But we'll get back with you guys as soon as possible and keep on talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. So with that, have a good rest of your day or night, wherever you are. And we will see you guys on the next episode of the Kingdom Says.